In a world enamored by Hollywood, its celebrities, their paradigms and ideals, is this where it's at? Join me each week as we discover the deeper meaning, an alternate spark to Hollywood's love, paparazzi, relationships, and empowerment. Yes, my friend, I am sparked by Hollywood. Hollywood claims a stage for empowerment. They claim that celebrities will show us how. They will be our prime examples. And yet, isn't there more? We have celebrities amongst us, neighbors, friends, who have a potent story, a strong voice of empowerment as they inspire, help, and change the lives of those around them. Something far beyond what Hollywood can produce. Welcome to the Sparked by Hollywood Empower series. Welcome to episode 39 of the Sparked by Hollywood series, which is also part 5 of our Empower series that we're wrapping up today. In this series, I have sat down with 5 unique individuals who have taken a stance in their life, turning around their situation for a positive and empowering change and turn of events. The first 4 series were empowering through pelvic core health, empowering through fashion and the Japanese kintsugi art, empowering from sexual abuse, and empowering the intimacy of our marriage. We're wrapping up the 5-part series with Chaz Volk, the host of the BadJew Pocast, who has a potent, empowering story of self-discovery and taking the trajectory of his life into his own hands. Welcome, Chaz.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I want to say it's really an honor to be here, part of the empowerment series. I really love what you're doing, Devorah. And I'm really touched that you had me on your show. This is really exciting.
All right, let's jump right in. We're going to start off with your memories of your grandmother and the special connection that you two had.
Absolutely. Well, growing up here in Los Angeles, California, my grandma was my best friend. She was often the person that would babysit me. We would go to movies together all the time. In fact, the classic weekend date of ours was for me to pick her up from her apartment. She was a little bit uncoordinated, so I'd have to buckle her in, right? I'd sit in the car and she'd jokingly say, "Drive, bitch, drive," And then we'd go to the IHOP. We'd get our breakfast and coffee. And then from the IHOP, we'd go to the nearby ArcLight Cinema at the time, now at Regal Cinema at the Sherman Oaks Galleria. And we'd watch our movies. And, if it wasn't, movies that we were doing again, I was just, a wee little lad. Even before that, we would play hide and go seek. And, we had a really touching, meaningful relationship. And when she passed in 2016, it was a very difficult time. I genuinely felt the absence when she was gone. Yeah.
In what way?
I think it was just always this life that I lived where she was always a part of it. She was always there. She was so involved. And when I received the news that she was gone, it was hard for me to interpret. And I couldn't imagine a world without her. And that world now being absent of her, I could kind of feel it. But I also at the same time started to find a new appreciation for looking at the little things in life and seeing the beauty in nature and thinking to myself, wherever there is beauty, that must be where my grandma is.
So you're really connecting with her on a soul level when you connect with nature.
Trying to, absolutely. There are definitely moments even to this day where I might be on a hike or I might be with some friends and I come across something as simple as a pot of flowers. I know that sounds so simple and cheesy, but I think of her and I'm like, that's my grandma right there. And, the mezuzah on my doorpost in my own personal bedroom is my grandma's mezuzah that she had to this day. So I'm still very much connected to my grandma. Her death was particularly impactful to me because of the Jewish connection that took place.
Tell us more about that.
Well, when she was dying, she was in hospice care. And my family was a part of a synagogue, a conservative synagogue in Thousand Oaks called Temple Etz Chaim. And the rabbi at the time had quarrels with my father because of political issues that were happening within the shul. My dad was a part of the board at the time. And my dad had asked the rabbi to come and help my grandma spiritually prepare for the next part of her life, prepare for death. And the rabbi, uncharacteristic of what a rabbi should be, said no. In my opinion, it was just one of the most heinous things that you could do, is let your petty squanders get in the way of your rabbinic duties. I think it was absolutely an awful, awful thing to do. So instead, they happened to have a Chabad program where a Chabad rabbi by the name of Moshe Brisky was teaching a program at Temple Chaim. And my dad would oftentimes go to Moshe Brisky to do Torah study with him at Temple Chaim. So my father brought in Moshe Brisky instead of our rabbi. And Moshe Brisky approached my grandma on her deathbed. And my grandma, from the story that I understand, my grandma right away felt inclined to kind of say, like, I like almost like guilty, as if she's confessing crimes. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't go to shul. I'm not very religious. And Rabbi Moshe Brisky didn't judge her on her deathbed. He said to her, I can teach you a prayer right now. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And had her, for the first time in her life, say the Shema on her deathbed. On her deathbed. And, when I heard that story, I certainly felt a sense of pride. I still tear up thinking about it to this day. I'm tearing up right now for a little bit for those who think about it, who are watching this. But, while she never really practiced her Judaism, she definitely did a lot of Jewish things. Like, she did a lot of volunteering. She was a contributor in a lot of ways, different tzedakah and philanthropy. She was just there for people. And she was very much integrated into our family, which is a Jewish value in itself. So I think in a lot of ways, she was definitely very culturally Jewish. And for the first time in her life, she was experiencing it on a more religious end, praying for the first time in her deathbed.
What was that like for you to witness this pivotal moment, this transition of your grandma, and really connecting to her Jewish roots in the form of prayer, but doing it on her deathbed versus doing it during her life and in her vibrancy as you knew her previously?
Yeah, well, granted, I wasn't there. Granted, I was in college.
Okay.
And again, it was me wishing I could be there and being really choked up over the fact that there's this new absence, but in a way that she was also there with me. And I think in a lot of ways, I still continue to grieve, going well into the pandemic and going well in afterwards. There were definitely times where, like, I genuinely missed her, and I was feeling it a little more than usual some days. It ebbs and flows, We just did an episode on my podcast, BadJew, talking about how Jews grieve and how, despite the regimented practices that exist within the grieving process, you naturally are going to feel it, post ritual, because rituals are very event based. You plan out time to do these rituals, but you cannot plan out emotions. And I can tell you as well, one of the things that I also experienced is that, and this might go into a separate rant, but emotions, whether negative or positive or just existing as they are, can be very empowering. And so I oftentimes took my grief and did whatever I could to transfer it into motivation to complete whatever I was trying to do, whether it was work for school, whether it was try to, get jobs in the film industry post-college, whether it was my transition out of the film industry, whether it was the creation of my business today. There's a lot of ways that it still stuck with me today that I used it to motivate me.
So it sounds like the emotions that you've been going through, you've used as a form of energy to perpetuate whatever you're doing to a finished product and just to positive action.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a silly question. I call it silly because to me it's so clear. But people ask all the time, why do bad things happen to good people? My answer is that's a silly question. I think it's actually a little selfish. Bad things happen to everybody. What determines if you're a good person or a bad person is how you handle that bad thing. And these negative emotions, these negative things that happen, you can always turn them into some kind of an energy. You can always use that to get you to the next point in your life. That's what it means to be a Stoic. And I very much identify with a lot of different Stoic philosophies that might not be Torah study per se, but I think that a lot of Stoicism melds very nicely into Jewish study. When I pray in the mornings, when I do my morning shachrit and I wrap my tefillin, oftentimes in the personal prayer portion of my morning prayers, I will say to God, do not give me an easy life. Give me the tools to withstand a hard life.
So potent, especially since you grew up with a very different lifestyle and outlook, especially within Judaism as you live now. Can you give us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I grew up at a conservative synagogue, Temple Chaim in Thousand Oaks, as I mentioned before. And I went to Hebrew school. And I think there's a lot of aspects to how I built my relationship with Judaism. There's a lot of different factors that went into play. I think part of it, as well as brain development, is that I sometimes wonder if there were certain concepts that were introduced to me too early. But one thing I did certainly, embrace is the community aspect. And I think I was very much happy to be a part of the Jewish community. I really liked it. I did grow up with a lot of anti-Semitism. I was bullied a lot. I was the victim of a hate crime in middle school and eighth grade.
Really?
Yeah. But these events all somehow got me closer to my Judaism. And, if there's ever anything you can look up, you can go to see my college experience at San Francisco State. That's when I was experiencing more Reform Judaism. But even there, I experienced a different type of anti-Semitism. I experienced systemic anti-Semitism from leftist extremists who, really did not, who let their anti-Zionism delve into anti-Semitism and very much discriminated against the Jewish community and made things very difficult for the Jewish community out in San Francisco State. So I had a really difficult experience out there. But again, those experiences got me closer to my Judaism. So I've always been very involved in the Jewish community. Post-college, I was introduced to something called Eish Lit, which is a fledgling of Eish Torah led by Rabbi Jack and Shir Malol. And I started to experience more traditional Orthodox culture for the first time, and started to embrace certain teachings and values of it in a greater way. So they were the ones that took me to Israel in, last year. It was my third trip to Israel that they took me on, and that changed my life.
Tell us more. Why was it so pivotal in your transformation?
And this ties into my grandma. So it's a really opportune question. What happened was, I think there's some elements to this, by the way, I should mention before talking about the Israel trip. And that is, first of all, like in my personal life, I probably wasn't doing the best morally. I think that there are certain people I took for granted. I think that there were certain actions I took that I'm definitely not proud of. And I definitely at times would compromise friendships just for personal gain. And that all sounds really evil, but I promise you, these are really, basic things. I'm speaking very generally here. But there was that going on. I was falling into a cycle. And one other aspect of this is that Eish Lit, for this Israel trip that they take you on, there's one donor in the Eish Torah community out here in Los Angeles who used to be the president of Eish Torah out here in LA that wants to meet every Jew that he sponsors to go out there. So I met this gentleman by the name of Richard Horowitz. And I actually had met him several times before that as well. But my experience with Richard Horowitz was that he was always the old man who gave you unsolicited advice and threw a bunch of articles at you. And it was always very pressuring and very intense. And I definitely had times where I left feeling very stressed out and aggravated from his office. But he was just trying to give the facts. And while he might look at things a little bit more black and white than I would like, I think that there is a lot of truth to what he says. But still, I think from that meeting that I had with him, I felt a certain kind of pressure. Now, when I finally was in Israel, I knew that I was at some kind of a crossroads. And I remember even acknowledging this to the fellow participants in the city of Tzfat in the north of Israel, the most spiritual city in all of Israel, for that matter. And I remember saying that I feel something coming up and I can't quite place my finger on it. I didn't know what it meant. I felt like the pressure building up the same way that, say, a volcano would feel pressure building up before it erupts. And I remember it was Shabbat morning in Tzfat when I had a nightmare. And the nightmare I had was I actually got in a physical fight with 3 of the most religious guys on that trip. And they kicked me off the trip. And that was my nightmare. It's kind of silly when I say it out loud, but I suddenly woke up in a jolt. And I wake up actually right next to one of the guys I just got in a fight with in my dreams. And it was like very like it was very jarring. It was like it was very weird. It was a very surreal experience. And what happened was I tried going back to sleep. It's now like 7 in the morning, and I couldn't fall asleep. So I ended up grabbing this book, this business book that I had, and then went downstairs into the lobby. And I figured I would just read in the lobby until people are awake. I was gonna just study up on some business concepts. But what happened was I actually heard my rabbi's voice, Rabbi Jack Malol's voice, in the chapel in that hotel, because every hotel in Israel has a chapel in the lobby. So I went into the chapel, and I saw my rabbi. He was speaking Hebrew to another Israeli gentleman, and they were just all waiting for a minyan to arrive so they could start their morning prayers for Shabbat. So I figured I would join them. I figured, okay, this would be great. I'll experience a authentic Israeli Shabbat in the morning. This is wonderful. Finally, a minyan of 10 men showed up, and we all started reading. I get passed out a Siddur, and I open it up, and I suddenly realize there's no titles, there's no page numbers. It's just all Hebrew. I felt something like very like lost. It kind of like that feeling of trying to like it's like, imagine if you asked a toddler to race Olympic runners. That's how I felt in that moment. I felt very behind.
Legit.
And I remember looking at this page full of letters that, yeah, I had studied them in Hebrew school, but I couldn't really connect to. They could have been in any language. They could have been in Japanese. I would have felt just as detached. And I remember feeling very disheartened by that, because I'm like, I'm here in Israel, and I can't connect to the very words that our people are based off of. I can't embrace this religious part of my identity. It's such an important part of who we are. There's so much history here. I'm here trying to experience my most authentic Jewish side, and I can't do it. I'm physically here, but I'm not spiritually there. And of all the people that I thought of in that moment, I thought of my grandma. And I remember asking the rabbi, Rabbi, where do I start? What do I do? And he says, he goes, you read here, and you're supposed to read through these prayers over here. But listen, Chaz, you've never really been taught this. So if you want, you can actually just sit there and read your business book, and we'll go ahead and pray. You being here is a mitzvah, because you make a 10th person. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds awful. I don't want to read a business book in shul. Like, that's not what I'm here to do. But of course, the rabbi was in the middle of his prayers. He wasn't prepared to give me a whole lesson on how to do morning Shabbat prayers. And there I was stuck. And I basically, I felt like that toddler against the Olympic racers. Like, everyone's off to the races and I'm left behind in the dust. And I started thinking about my grandma, and I started to wonder, is this how grandma felt when she was saying the Shema for the first time in front of a Chabad rabbi? And I got emotional, but I was hiding it. And I waited for an 11th person to show up. And when the 11th person showed up, I left quietly. And I put my book away, and I went for a walk around the city. And now I'm in this empty city where no one's driving. All the streets are barren, but you can hear the populace of Tzfat all saying their prayers from different shuls and different homes and all over. So you hear the same prayers being echoed back and forth throughout the corridors of Tzfat and all the streets of Tzfat. And I broke down crying. And I sat on this bench overlooking the water of Tiberias, and I just broke down crying, because this was a pivotal moment for me where I said, I don't just want to say I'm Jewish. I want to do Jewish. I want to learn Jewish. I want to live Jewish. And it was so hard for me to, I guess, wrap my brain around the fact that, now I'm really doing Jewish learning, even though I've been to Hebrew school. And this is what I was talking about with like brain development. Like, I don't think I was necessarily like able to embrace what we were really doing there.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't worldly aware enough to understand the importance of it. But in that moment, I was like, this I need in my life.
Wow.
And, there was like a point in that Israel trip where I started to feel, I saw everyone with a kippah, and I felt a certain sense of Jewish pride, and I felt naked without my kippah. So I bought a kippah, and now I wear kippahs every day. As soon as I got back from Israel, I started wrapping tefillin in the morning. I started doing the Shema in the morning. It's beautiful. I daven now.
What's that like for you, making those changes in your life?
Well, when I came back from Israel, I remember having a little bit of a panic attack, because now I've made a little bit of a dramatic change in my life. I'm living my life very differently. I'm living on a new cycle, a new routine. And I'm like, what does this mean? Does this mean I'm Orthodox now? I was like, no, you're not Orthodox. But also that pressure, I think the big thing for me was the labels are so harmful. I actually, when I referred to the Chabad rabbi, and I referred to Aisha Torah is the more orthodox exposure. I said that really for audience reference, but I can tell you right now, I do not like labels like that. That's why I created Bad Jew, because a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. It shouldn't be anything more than that. I don't want to be called anything else but Jew. And I'm here exploring and learning, and I'm taking on rituals as they make sense to me and as they emotionally connect to me. Any ritual that I haven't quite embraced or I haven't wrapped my brain around, I won't be able to embrace. I won't be able to do in heart like fully yet. So I do certain aspects that make the most sense, and I continue to learn to this day.
Wow. And how did your parents, relatives, and friends react to the changes that you had made when you came back from Israel?
Something I joked about a lot was I would say, "Hey guys, my eyes are down here," because they'd be looking at my kippah, like, what's Chaz suddenly doing with the kippah now? I think there was definitely a little bit of an adjustment period, but a very quick learning curve and very quick to acceptance amongst family and friends for sure.
And I'm sure you're taking it slowly, one day at a time, and embracing who you are.
A lot of ways, absolutely. And again, I think what's also sped up the process of taking it one day at a time. I go one interview at a time with my show. Selfishly, Bad Jew has been my own personal Jewish study, and if people happen to want to listen, that's a great side effect. I think that's actually one of the biggest things when it comes to podcasting, is understanding that the success that people want are a side effect to the host's personal desires. And let's take any podcast, like a podcast like Serial, which is a murder mystery podcast, right? People love mystery, but they love murder mysteries, but that's because the host loves murder mysteries. The host didn't just choose a genre because it's popular. The host chose the genre because they were personally connected to it. And then it was a side effect that they listened. And then the side effect of the listenership was sponsorship. So it should never be your goal. The goal should always be just to be passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
And the
And
rest will
providing
come.
value.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your social media picture is donning tefillin. Explain to the audience, what is tefillin and why do you connect so much to this mitzvah?
Yeah, absolutely. So tefillin is this ritual practice that Jews have had since Jews and Romans coexisted side by side. It's from the Kabbalah. You put up there's a leather box. It's all leather, by the way. It has to be from organic material that is on your bicep, on your weaker arm, by the way. And also it's wrapped around your arm, wrapped around your hand in a special way. It's put on your head. On your head, there are 4 prayers, and on your bicep, there is 1 prayer, but it's all in this box. And the primary prayer on there is the Shema. And when you wrap tefillin, the main blessing that you're supposed to do is the Shema. But you also have other prayers in there as well that you would do. And those 4 prayers make up morning Shachrit, which is just the morning prayers in Judaism. So, it's this wonderful spiritual, ritualistic item that Jews, namely men, do. Now, personally, I don't think it should be exclusive to men. There are figures in the Torah and the Talmud that are women that wear tefillin. And I think it's more of an identity thing than it is a gender role item. And this is me still learning, by the way. As you can see, there are concepts that are learning, and I don't pretend to be a master I don't pretend to be a teacher by any stretch of the imagination. I'm here learning just as much, and I'm always open to feedback on that.
Yeah, listen, we know something, we share something. It's not about showing that we're perfect in any way, shape, or form. But I like that you have that humility, and we should all have that, where we're all in a space of exploration and finding out more. But I love that you can share this part of your journey. Your unique perspective in your personal life also has an effect the way you run and you view your business life. Tell us how.
There definitely is a connection to your personal experiences in life and the way that you run your business. And I've always had a very honest father. I've always had a very humble father for a mentor, and I'm very grateful for that. My father helped me build my business. He was my first client and basically taught me how to do relative pricing and competitive pricing. He also taught me how to network and to sell, and he introduced me to further mentors that helped open up other doors for me in the world of sales, in the world of marketing, in the world, you name it. My father has been a huge contributor to that. But I'll definitely say this is that I was always inspired by my father's small business journey that he had. When I grew up, he had a company called Mercury Document Imaging, which sold office machines for over 30 years. It grew to such a successful point that he sold it and now lives a semi-retired life in Oxnard, California, which is the closest thing that California has to Venice, Italy. So, he has this wonderful, my parents both now have this wonderful life because of the effort that they put in during my childhood. My parents were both very honest people that led their businesses, in my opinion, in a way that was strategic, but also allowed for emotions and honesty to really be, important practices within the business, that personal touch that makes a business significant.
Yeah, that's beautiful, especially since you have a strong family tie, which you're able to use to your advantage and look up to your parents in their ideals, how they live life and how they run their business. And you're able to emulate that and translate that into your own success as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in terms of my success, do I actually have my own success yet? I think I've done successful things. I still am very much driven to reach a point of satisfaction where I can say I have been successful. I can tell you, though, my failures have been the most humbling experiences over the past 4 years of creating my business. It's been a very, very difficult journey, a lot of rejections. Few people fired me here and there, but they all led to lessons learned, and ultimately I've come up with my head held high, and I'm really proud of that.
Back to your personal journey, what would you say to someone who's also at their crossroad in their lives and they know that they need to make some kind of change? Their heart is telling them something, but they're just not sure where to start. Should they go to Israel and sit at the mountaintop of Tzfat and they'll find some kind of answer?
I mean, sure. That's certainly one way to go about it.
Right.
But I think in general terms, whether you are Jewish or not Jewish and you're listening to this podcast, I'm gonna steal advice from, one of my favorite YouTube channels called Yes Theory. Their motto is to seek discomfort. I challenge you listening to seek discomfort. If you feel that you're at a crossroad and you know that something in your life needs a change, you need to be willing to listen to people that you don't typically listen to. You need to put yourself in spaces that you've never felt welcomed in. You need to expose yourself to experiences that you've never said yes to. And that discomfort will help you grow in so many different ways. And I know being uncomfortable is uncomfortable, but the reason why they are, in comparison to the total number of human beings that have ever existed on Earth, you only really learn about a small fraction of them. The only reason why you learn about such a small fraction of those people, the moment someone becomes a historical figure is because they went through enough trials and tribulations to get there. They really sought out discomfort. Yeah. And you should too. If you want to ever get any sense of happiness in your life, people don't realize that the cost of happiness is discomfort. It's that simple.
So it sounds like if someone's at a crossroad and they have an opportunity that comes up that makes them uncomfortable, you're saying that's probably where they should be. It's God telling them you're on your path, go for it.
The higher up the mountain you go, the windier it gets.
And embrace it.
Embrace it. It's going to suck. Embrace the suck. It's that simple.
Fantastic. Before we wrap up, Chaz, tell my listeners how they could connect with you.
Thank you so much, Devor. It really has been a treat to be here on this podcast. I've, been listening to a lot of your different episodes, and I'm really moved by this empowerment series. So again, it's been a real treat to borrow your time to be on this show. This is awesome. Yes, please, if you are interested in business inquiries, please go to mrthrive.com. That is mrthrive.com. However, for Bad Jew, please go on Instagram or TikTok at BadJewPod. Go ahead and give us a follow, DM me, say that you found me from Sparked by Hollywood, and let's be friends. Let's do it. When it comes to my email, we have thebadjewpod@gmail.com. You can also reach us there. And in general, I'm a pretty receptive person. I'm pretty open, so please hit me up, and you should be expecting a response within 24 hours, unless it's Shabbat.
Yeah, like Chaz said, reach out, become friends with him. You will not be disappointed. Thank you, Chaz.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode.
If you are loving the Spark by Hollywood podcast, kindly leave me a 5-star review on the platform that you're listening on. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Sparked by Hollywood. That's where the conversations happen. That's where I give you extra content on all my episodes and where you can send me your feedback, your comments, and questions. And finally, in a world where we are all enamored by the spark of Hollywood and its celebrities, always remember your own spark that you carry within you that makes you the gift that the world needs to shine that much brighter. I'll catch you in the next episode.